Hey everybody, this is Kevin Steinhauser. We are here working on some synthesis tonight, but I want to do a quick overview of just synthesis expectations for my mindset as an AP reader. I want you to walk away tonight knowing, okay, I definitely know what I need to do to nail this essay, to walk away with the most confident piece of writing I can have. So I'll talk about pretty quickly what synthesis expectations are, and then I'll show you a model introduction, a model body paragraph, and then we'll take a little bit more time, since that is our main topic of the night, to talk about conclusions. I am flexible here tonight. If anyone wants me to slow down on any of these pieces, please let me know. Again, I want to make sure everyone understands this is what I need to do to earn the synthesis. So again, I'm an AP reader for the last several years, and I've graded synthesis a couple times in the last, I think, 2 out of the last 3 years. So I will be kind of skimming across, hey, this is what you absolutely need to know in under an hour to succeed on the synthesis exam. What you need to do after tonight's exam, at some point, and the more reps the better, grab an AP released synthesis prompt and write some practice. You can watch the replay of my slides. You can download my slides, and you can cross-reference your paragraphs with mine. Now, I want to be really clear. When I show you my model paragraphs, I'm not saying this is the only way to be successful. What I'm saying is this is the most common path to synthesis success. So I'll show you, after reading literally well over 2,000 synthesis essays in the last few years, what I've noticed that the people who are successful do. So I actually have written out one introduction, one body paragraph, one conclusion, all in the same prompt. Again, that's for you to reference back. Okay, am I doing what Kevin is doing here? Because I'm kind of synthesizing and writing my own body paragraph, my own intro and conclusion on what I've noticed a lot of other people doing. So I hope that's helpful tonight. And if there's any clarity, I will be checking periodically the Ask a Question tab. So we actually have our first question from Grace tonight. Grace asks, will synthesis be a certain topic we need to read on, or will this be like an example synthesis? Grace, I'll answer. I'm not sure what you're asking here in terms of, are you talking about my stream tonight or your synthesis prompt on the exam? So I'll answer both very quickly. If you want to do a follow-up question, if this isn't clear, just shoot me another question. So for tonight, I'm just going to tell you the topic. You will not have to have read the sources to get everything I'm throwing at you tonight. But when you practice, obviously, you'll be using those released exams. In terms of this is a good question. I'm not sure, Grace, if it's what you were meaning, but I think this is a really good question that I get a lot. Is there a way to prepare for the synthesis topic? And I will say this, College Board, no matter what the test like format in terms of like testing environment looks like this year, the prompts, the essay prompts, have been finalized months ago. So there will not be a COVID-19 synthesis prompt. There could be in years, but they will be prompts that they've been written for months in advance, and every year College Board chooses a different topic. For synthesis specifically, they look for this, a topic that you may or may not have background knowledge on. They're hoping you have limited background knowledge on it. And I'm not from College Board. I'm just saying, based on all the prompts that I've read, the prompts are accessible, but they hope you're not experts on it. So you're not going to get these hot button issues that they know you debated in your high school English or social studies classes. You're not going to get abortion or the death penalty or something that like everyone has thought about by the time they're a high school junior or senior. You might get prompts like the ones we've seen in the past on eating local. Last year's was on solar energy. There's been ones in the past about eminent domain. I actually scored that one a couple years ago. So there's no way to know what topic you're going to get. Obviously, like, this is easy to say but true. The more you know about the world around you, the higher of a successful, like, oh, I know something about this prompt. But you can't plan on, like, I'm going to know everything. So with all of that said, the only way to really prepare for the synthesis stream, or I'm sorry, the synthesis essay, is to look at these models that we're going to look at tonight and then practice, practice, practice. It's not about quantity of reps, it's about quantity of quality reps. I tell my students that all the time. I'd rather have them write 3 awesome synthesis essays between now and May than like 10 that they're like just rushing through. So really make sure everything you do is your best. And I tell my students, every essay that you write, or even if you're just practicing with the body paragraph, is better than the one previously. All right, thank you for the question. Let's keep it moving here. If anyone does have a question as I'm going, I promise I will get to them. All right, so synthesis expectations. Number 1, this is probably the most important thing you need to know for synthesis. I know this is review. Most of you have started or like thoroughly went through a synthesis unit or some practice in your classes, but to basically catch everyone up to speed, let's make sure we know what the expectations are. When you're writing a synthesis essay, it's very important. It is your opinion driving this essay. You are taking from multiple sources. You are looking through 6 to 8 sources. You are reading and annotating them and looking at, okay, what do I believe? So many students, and this is the most common error in synthesis writing, just summarize other people's thoughts and beliefs. Source A says blank, source B says blank. It doesn't matter what source A or B says in your writing unless you're weaving it into your own thoughts. So that's super, super important. So going right alongside that is expectation number 2, make clear claims. Just like you would in an argument essay, make sure your topic sentences are super clear. I'll show you my body paragraph here in a few minutes, but it's a red flag to me, and this is not a hard and fast rule. Nothing I say tonight, because writing is such an art, not a science, nothing I say tonight is a hard and fast rule. But I will tell you this, it's a big red flag when I see a student's topic sentence says, source D says blah, blah, blah. Because so many times that student is going to take an entire body paragraph summarizing source D. And if that's in your topic sentence, it's not a hard and fast rule that you will be summarizing. But as a reader, I'm like, oh boy, I hope he or she's not summarizing, because that is the most common clue that you are. Source D says blank. So save your sources for not your topic sentences. Your topic sentences should just like an argument topic sentence. I tell my students, write your topic sentence. I should not know, if I'm only looking at that sentence, if it's an argument essay or a synthesis essay, because they're both your argument. All right, you know this, I'm sure. You must cite a minimum of 3 different sources to support your claims. A lot of students, and here's another common mistake, think that it's better to cite every source possible, or as many as possible. And that's actually not true, because then you're kind of misrepresenting the point of synthesis. The point of synthesis is not cite every source. The point of synthesis is weave some of these sources, at least 3, into your own argument. If you don't have anything to say about source A, ignore it. If you don't have anything to say about source D, ignore it. If you don't have time to talk about every source thoughtfully, choose the ones, because this is, again, a 40-minute essay plus 15 minutes timed reading of the sources. If you don't have time to do this, choose the sources you have the most to say about. And that leads me into step 4 here of the expectations. Thoroughly explain how the evidence you cited supports your claims. That's where you earn your score. It's not about citing the sources, although you have to cite at least 3. It's about what you do with the sources. It's where you are the thinker and the writer. I tell my students this all the time. AP Language is a class about thinking. I honestly think it's a class more about thinking than about writing. Sure, you can have a beautiful prose writing style. That gets you 1 sophistication point, and that's a hard point to get. How you get that evidence and commentary, which is out of 4 points on our rubric, is all about really the quality of a thinker you are. And then as a writer, it's just your job to articulately express your thoughts. All right. I want to talk about timing really quickly. This is a really common question that I get every group of students that I talk to. So how should I time my essay? So first of all, College Board highly recommends that you take 15 minutes to read and annotate the sources and plan your essay. So you have, if you take those 15 minutes off the table and say, this is my synthesis reading time, you've got 40 minutes per essay for the next 3. Synthesis is always going to be question 1. So you've got 15 minutes to do some reading, and then, in planning your essay, 40 minutes to write. How do we maximize these next 40 minutes? Well, here's my advice, and you can absolutely personalize this and make it your own. But again, I'm prioritizing the body paragraphs because that's where I earn my score. I have to write a solid thesis statement. I'm going to be honest with you. If you write a 1-sentence introduction and it's a really solid thesis statement, that's fine. But I will tell you this, it's better if you write like I'm going to show you tonight. So building some context about the topic before your thesis statement. That should take about 7 minutes, and I'll show you that tonight. 28 minutes. So the vast majority of our writing time is in body paragraphs. I recommend 2 or 3. Don't feel like, oh, I need to write this 5-paragraph essay. So sometimes 2 body paragraphs are great. It's all about quality of body paragraphs than quantity. So I'd rather have you write 2 awesome body paragraphs than 3 like skimming and not like digging deep with your thoughts. So that's why I say 2 to 3. Most of my students write 2 body paragraphs for each just because they know, hey, less is more here if I go deep with my body paragraphs. All right, and I recommend, honestly, spending about 3 minutes on a conclusion. We'll talk about the conclusion controversy later tonight, and I actually would be interested in your feedback on what do you do or what do your teachers tell you? Should I write a conclusion or not? But we will talk about that tonight. My recommendation is write one, but only take a few minutes on it, and then take a couple minutes to proofread and revise. So proofreading, revising literally means look critically for your own mistakes. It's not pat yourself on the back. This is a pretty good essay. It's, man, I'm going to take 2 minutes, look for my mistakes. And literally, I tell my students this all the time, if synthesis is your first essay, you can write them in any order, but most students write synthesis first because it's question 1. Take 2 minutes, perfect your essay as much as you can, grammatically, word choice, etc., and then move on and forget about it. Do not worry about it. Don't go back and say, man, I should probably go proofread this one more time. Do it while it's fresh and you're in the zone, and then brain dump it, move on to analysis and argument. All right, we got a couple questions coming in. All right, this is kind of what I was just talking about. Which essay should we do first? Which essay should we do last? It's really up to you. The best thing you can do is kind of do 1 or 2 runs of 2 hours and 15 minutes. You can go on the College Board's website if your teacher isn't doing a mock exam like this, and download 3 essays, write them back to back to back. I absolutely think it's a tragedy for students who, for the first time in their lives, it's May, it's exam day, are writing 3 essays back to back to back. I promise you, I do 2 runs with my students. I just give them 2 hours and 15 minutes. We have a creative solution, a school day, so I can be with them for a couple hours, and no one does better the first time than the second time. They learn from like their timing mistakes. Timing is a big deal on our AP language exam. So with all of that said, the biggest problem is, crap, I didn't finish the 3rd essay. Oh my God, I forgot to write the 3rd essay. That literally happens every year to somebody. So that's a big deal. Keep an eye on the clock. In terms of order, I say like come in with plan A on that run through and see if you like it, see if it worked. So most people do synthesis first, and here's why. Your proctor will give you some time warnings that assume you've taken 15 minutes of reading time, like I just talked about on synthesis. So if you want the time warnings to be beneficial to you, do synthesis first. Because they're going to say, okay, 40 more minutes have gone by. You should be starting your 2nd essay. Well, that's assuming you've taken 15 minutes to read and annotate and plan your synthesis. So if you haven't done that, you kind of have to ignore the proctor and really be in control of your own timing. All right, so I recommend doing synthesis first because of the proctor announcement reasons. Then it's honestly up to you if you want to do analysis next or argument. I would not make that a game day decision. I would not say, well, let me go look at the prompt, because that's just too much thinking like that you're wasting on like, okay, what essay should I do next? Then you might be second guessing yourself of like, oh man, should I have written argument actually first before analysis? Go on with your game plan. It's probably going to be based on which one is stronger for you. A lot of students, and this makes sense, right, go in order. So that's synthesis, analysis, argument. And that's totally fine. Just know it's not required. So you might prefer to do synthesis, argument, analysis. I'd try it out each way. If like analysis is a glaring weakness to you, but you can write a beautiful argument essay as long as you're like super focused in on it, maybe do argument second. Maybe save your weakness for last, because if it doesn't go well, at least you didn't screw your timing up for the argument essay. So think about saving your weakness for last, or just going in order. If you're like, nope, I'm pretty good at all three of these essays, or I'm confident in all three of these essays. My biggest point of feedback there is this. Don't, two things. Don't go in saying, hey, I wonder what I'm going to read next or write next. And second, don't go in without having written 3 essays back to back to back in that 2 hours and 15 minutes window. I promise you, you will learn from that experience. We got another question. Okay, are all 3 FRQs completed in one sitting, or do the proctors stop you in between each for the exam? They are absolutely done back to back to back, no breaks. So like literally no restroom breaks. If you have to use the restroom, the time is still ticking, and they highly discourage that. So here's the exam very quickly. An hour multiple choice, a small break. You can go to the restroom, you can like stretch, and then you're just getting after it. 2 hours and 15 minutes to write 3 essays. So they're not going to tell you, okay, close your synthesis essay, get out your next one. Literally, they're giving you time warnings of it's recommended that you move on to your second essay. It's been 40 minutes. But so, or like it's been 15 minutes. You should begin writing your essay. You might be a minute behind, you might be a minute ahead, but those are there to help you stay paced. It's possible, because no one's there to stop you. The proctor is not allowed to say anything other than what's on the script. It's possible for you to write the best synthesis essay of your life, right, for 2 hours on the synthesis essay. That'd be a terrible decision, but it's possible. So that, and literally every year at the AP reading, we see blank argument, because that's question 3. We see the student wrote question 3 at the top, because you got to number your essays 1, 2, or 3 to correspond. And every year there are so many blank question 3s because the students just didn't keep track of time, and they wrote really good maybe synthesis or analysis essays, but they didn't save time for argument. So that's something to, again, that's why I really stress, do a couple run-throughs before May. We've got some time. I highly recommend, if you have internet, you can go to APU's website and find many released exams. Carve out 2 hours and 15 minutes. Make sure you're super focused. See what you can do. It will definitely be worth your time. All right, let's get back to synthesis now in terms of my slides. I'm going to do this intro pretty quickly because that's not our focus tonight. We've had a deep dive 2 or 3 weeks ago on our synthesis intro. And if you have a Fiveable account, you can log in and look at any of the replays. We have dozens of AP language replays this year, and there's still mine from last year up as well. So let's quickly look at this intro. I'm going to, let me see. Yeah, this is just my entire intro on this slide. So first of all, the prompt says, and this is one from just a few years ago about monuments. This is the wording from College Board. Examine the factors a group or agency should consider in memorializing an event or person and in creating a monument. So synthesis could give you one of 2 types of prompts. One could say take a position on, and it's just like argument then. You're agreeing, disagreeing, qualifying. Or one like this where you're determining factors. And here in my thesis, I have to say what the most important factors are. We want to make sure everyone's getting the thesis point. All right, so let me go ahead and quickly read this, and I'll point out a couple things along the way, and then we'll shift to the body paragraphs. Again, remember, I'm building context, and then I have my very clear claims, which are the factors, written in my thesis statement at the end. That's worth an entire point. make sure you get the thesis point. I would say, hey, play it safe. It can be anywhere in your essay, but I would just put it as most people are trained to. Most of us teachers expect it here. We're not going to punish you if you have it in your conclusion or somewhere else. We'll still be looking for one and hoping you get it, but just makes your life easier to be like, yep, I know that they know that this is my thesis statement. All right, let's read it. In today's society, setting out to memorialize a person or event is not as easy as it once was. I'm building context here about the topic, I can't talk, memorializing an event or person. Okay, throughout the last few years, it has become more and more common for advocacy groups to criticize a monument because of its one-sided look at history. Confederate statues, for example, once proudly representing their respective cities, are now being taken down at record rates. Gone are the days of greenlighting the majority of fully funded projects. Rather, and I want you to notice here in this next sentence, I am very deliberately and clearly pulling language, a couple of the buzzwords from the prompt to say, okay, I'm building context, but I'm narrowing my focus into what they're asking me to write about. Rather, groups and agencies must carefully consider how the current generation and future generations will view the person or event being memorialized. While cost and location are unavoidable factors that must be considered when setting out to create a monument, the most significant factor, this is my thesis by the way, the most significant factor in creating a monument that will stand for generations to come is societal perception, both in the present and in the future. I'm pushing for that sophistication point, by the way. So that sophistication point, I'm not going to talk about tonight other than this. Because the point of this stream is, let's just maximize your synthesis score. And the biggest way you can focus on that is to raise that 0 to 4 scale of evidence and commentary, pushing for a 3 or 4 there. If you get a 3 or 4 there, you get your thesis point, you will be golden. That sophistication point is going to be rare, but what they're looking for, the rubric kind of says there's a few things you can do. One of them being really sophisticated prose writing style. That's super rare. It's not really something you can learn in a matter of 2 months here, right? It's something that every single one of us is gradually getting better at with each and every writing practice. But what they're also looking for and looking to reward you for, and this is only the top several percent, I have no idea. We haven't been normed on this yet, but I can tell the synthesis point is going to be rare. So it's only going to be for the best of the best essays here. But what they're looking for is really thoughtful, you're really thinking about the topic in a nuanced, individual way. So you're not just repeating things that most people are going to say. So why my thesis is setting me up for some sophistication. And you're not looking at my whole essay tonight, so we're not going to say, oh, this would have got it or this wouldn't have got it. Because you need to be consistent throughout, and your essay needs to flow and work together to get that sophistication point. But I do know this. This is a more thoughtful thesis than one that just says, here's 3 factors. Look at what I did again. I'm going to read my thesis again. While cost and location are unavoidable factors that must be considered. Okay, so those are 2 factors I'm going to talk about. However, I'm setting them up as but not all factors are created equal. And because I'm doing that, I'm pushing for more thoughts, or more nuanced thought, I should say, than just your cookie cutter cost, location, and blank are important factors. That's okay. That clearly gets the thesis point, but this is a more sophisticated line of reasoning. The most significant factor in creating a monument that will stand for generations to come is societal perception. Again, make sure you have that thesis point. It's the easiest point to get. Sophistication is the hardest point. So the rest of tonight, we're going to focus on making sure you earn your evidence and commentary. I think it's very possible with some practice that every single one of us here gets at least a 3 on that 0 to 4 scale. I think 4s are going to be rare, but I think 3s, I think they're very doable, but I do think you need to be deliberate. It's all about what you do in your body paragraphs, obviously. Or not obviously, but I just want to make that really clear. We're going to be talking about conclusions here for a bit after this, but let's really make sure we understand what to do. So my first thing that I said tonight about body paragraphs was write a clear claim. Let's look at my clear claim. Societal perception, both of current and future generations, is a crucial factor to consider when planning a monument. So this is maybe my third body paragraph because it was the third factor that I listed in my thesis. Now, I want to very quickly cite a source. Two things about that, and there's been deeper dives, so you can go check out some replays on synthesis on embedding quotes and body paragraphs of synthesis. But I'm going to tell you some highlights here. Two things to pay attention to. One, look at how much of this paragraph is my personal thought. And two, because the more the better. I don't want to just be citing sources. And two, look how much I am clearly the writer of this paragraph. What I mean is I'm not giving up a platform to the other authors of the sources. I'm going to cite them, but then I'm going to talk about them myself. I'm not going to cite like source A says blah and just quote for like 20 words. I'm going to very carefully craft and knit their writing into my own. Less is more when you're quoting others. It's all about what you say. So look at how I kind of get into the next sentence here. I start to narrow my focus so I can use this source very deliberately. I will say this before I do that actually. This body paragraph is super long. So I recognize like in a 40-minute timed environment, most people should be writing 2 body paragraphs if they're this long. Again, you got to make sure you have time for all 3 of the essays. But when I'm writing a body paragraph in synthesis, they are going to be long because here's my like secret formula. And again, there's infinite ways to earn the perfect score, 1 for 1, and there's infinite ways to earn any of the scores from 0 in between. But I think this is like something that I just want everyone focused on. Use 2 different sources in each body paragraph. Let me be clear. You see, if you start to look at this slide, I've cited source C twice, but that's only one source. So I'm not saying cite twice or quote twice. I'm saying cite 2 different sources. That's the beauty of synthesis. We want to see as your readers how you're bringing information together. So sure, you could do that by citing like 3 body paragraphs, source C, source E, source A. But, and yeah, that's technically synthesis because your ideas are flowing. But this is even better because I'm seeing how 2 sources are working together to prove my one topic sentence here. So the secret formula that I just want everyone taking is, if you're not already doing this, every synthesis body paragraph, cite 2 different sources. So let's look at mine. It's going to take us 3 slides to get there because it's so long. Let's read, starting at each year. Each year, it seems, people are more likely to view history through a critical lens, and monuments that do not adequately portray history or that celebrate things that are not necessarily worth celebrating are often criticized. Downs, for example, describe Mount Rushmore as being close to graffiti because of its blatant defacing of Native American land. Just 20 years ago. So that was like a quote paraphrase, and now I'm going to keep driving my own wording forward. I'm not giving up a platform to quote him yet. Just 20 years ago, Mount Rushmore was almost universally heralded as the literal faces of American engineering and patriotism. Okay, there's my little English nerd pun for you. The literal faces of American engineering and patriotism. Now, here's another quote. Look at how I'm controlling the language in the quote, though. I'm the writer here, and it's clear that I'm embedding the quote into my own sentence. Now, in our modern society, Downs certainly is not alone in asking, did the white men have to carve faces all over the hills that the Sioux still hold sacred? Now, I can't be done there. It's tempting to move on to source E, which is my next one, but the next 2 to 3 sentences are why I'm getting the score that I'm getting. It's all about what I think about whatever I'm quoting. It's not about, oh, I found a cool quote. That's important, but only because the cool quote that I found, I have something to say. So let's look at what I say. So the designers and funders of Mount Rushmore likely did not spend much time in the early 20th century worrying about the reactions of citizens in the early 21st century. But perhaps they should have. This is clearly my opinion. If they had better considered societal perception of the location of the monument, it would be surrounded by a lot less controversy today. While there is increasing societal criticism of monuments that celebrate the wrong parts of history, arguably worse is when monuments are constructed in an attempt to rewrite history. Okay, that was a transitional sentence to connect source C and E. I'm going to shift to source E. So notice before I did that, I had 2 or 3 sentences that unpacked source C and connected to my topic sentence. I'm going to do the same thing, rinse and repeat here with source E. Look at it, it's a forward quote. There was immediate and intense controversy, for example, when plans were released to construct a Holocaust museum in Washington, D.C. Critics pointed out the irony of the United States spending federal funding to build a monument when the government did little to stop the Holocaust from occurring. Clearly, my sentence, I'm embedding a quote in. I can't be done here. The most important part of my paragraph is what happens next. This is my opinion again. Because the creators of the Holocaust Museum heard this outrage and considered the societal perception that a tone-deaf museum would foster, this museum is a success story. I'm connecting the dots here. This is all me as a thinker. The Holocaust Museum does not ignore history. In fact, it memorializes the details of this terrible period of history with painful accuracy. Because of the creators' awareness of societal perception, this museum is no longer surrounded in controversy. As a result, the museum functions as intended. Millions of visitors have walked through the exhibits, filled with horrific memory of one of the cruelest periods in human history. When agencies, this is my wrap-up sentence here, take note of this one. When agencies look potential criticism in the face, they can plan proactively so their monument successfully serves its purpose for generations to come. Now, that was a super long body paragraph. What I want you to really focus in on is you're probably only going to have time to do 2 of those, if I'm being completely honest. Most people didn't. If I was writing a timed essay, I'd probably be in that same boat as well. But if you do that twice, that would get you 4 different sources. I think 4 sources is the sweet spot for synthesis. Don't try to force in 5, 6, 7, 8. Do it well. Choose the sources deliberately. Have a lot of your own commentary, which is you talking about your sources. How does the source information you chose connect back to your claim and therefore your thesis? All right, now let's shift to kind of like the stream as advertised, conclusions. If anyone has a question on body paragraphs that you think of, we will certainly circle back to it. Okay, I think a conclusion for every essay in AP language, A, you should have one, but B, you should take about 3 minutes to write it. So that's 4 to 6 sentences. Do it as fast as you can. The thinking is done at that point, people. What I'm saying is, like, don't sit there and be like, oh man, I gotta like really do something awesome here. Nope. Write a quick conclusion. I'll show you how to make it effective here. You're briefly re-emphasizing your thesis statement in light of your concrete evidence. In other words, in light of your concrete evidence means you're not just saying your thesis statement again. Like, you're acknowledging your reader has just read it, so you're just kind of wrapping it up, and it's absolutely appropriate to connect the dots one last time, kind of like to show, yeah, there was a logical thread to my essay here. I'm going to point that out in my conclusion. Okay, 3 common weak conclusions. I will say this. I'm going to kind of estimate some numbers here. So I've been an AP reader for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, I think. 2 of those years I read synthesis. But no matter what I've read, most students have a weak conclusion. And I'm going to be honest, and we're going to talk about the conclusion controversy here in just 1 minute. It doesn't really screw people. It doesn't really like terribly impact their score. But I'm saying, hey, it can help round out your essay. Here's I think the point of conclusions. They're going, if you're on the fence of a score category, and that could be sophistication. Should I give them a 0 or 1? It could be evidence and commentary. Okay, was this fully developed? Is this a 2 or a 3? Should I give her a 3 or a 4? A really great conclusion can tip the scales for you. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, they don't have a conclusion. 0. That's not this at all. There's no conclusion point. but I do think it can only help you if done effectively. Here's 3 things that are not effective. If you just copy your thesis statement down as one sentence, not effective. If you just bring up a random piece of evidence and don't explain it, not effective. Don't bring up something new unless you have like a couple sentences where you can unpack it. You can absolutely like bring in the final connection, but don't be like, so have you ever thought of X? And then like it doesn't connect, or it just doesn't work with your essay. Be really careful to bring in something new. It can work, but only if like there's a thread that's building to it. And then I'm going to throw this in here as a common weak conclusion. This is maybe the most common, not including a conclusion at all. A conclusion is an opportunity. So take that opportunity. It's an opportunity to show, yeah, there's a solid line of reasoning throughout my entire essay, and it's a complete piece of work. It's not like, oh, I ran out of time, or oh, I didn't know how to conclude. Conclusions are tough to pull off. Well, let's talk about them here. Before we do, throw to me in the chat, if you would like, on what do you normally do on your essays, or what does your teacher normally do? So say like I skip conclusions, or I always write a conclusion, or like I don't know what to do in a conclusion. Give me some feedback here as I keep kind of walking through this. Here's where I am. Conclusions are an opportunity to show exactly what you can do as a writer. I think it's like an opportunity to show off your writing skills. We'll talk about what it looks like. We'll look at my model. But I know teachers personally, and I know students from other schools, because sometimes I go and like talk to other schools in my district about AP language and things like that. And sometimes like, whoa. We don't write conclusions here. So that's why it's a controversy. Like, dude, what is this Kevin Steinhauser guy talking about? He's like saying we should write conclusions. My teacher says we shouldn't. So I'm saying this. You should absolutely take advantage of the opportunity to show off your writing skills, but you should not do so in more than 3 minutes. So it's kind of a point of tension here. So a lot of times when teachers say, this is what I think, don't write a conclusion, what they're really saying is don't waste time stressing about a conclusion. I'll show you here tonight what you can do. And again, what I'm focusing on is this. Don't take more than 3 minutes on it. So it's kind of a point of tension. Like we're doing a stream tonight focused on like wrapping up our synthesis unit, talking about conclusions. But I'm saying they're not that important, but you should still have them. But again, if you don't take more than 3 minutes on them, they can only help adjust your score as long as you don't fall into one of those 3 weak conclusion traps. Okay, so let's look at my model. This is the same problem. This would be at the end of my essay, assuming I had written 1 or 2 additional body paragraphs. So look at how I'm weaving all of my ideas together. And again, I'm doing this in 3 minutes, so I recognize this is like the bar. I'm just going to keep working on getting closer to it in my timed practice as we go the next couple months here. So let's read. From downtown New York City to middle of nowhere, Nevada, groups and agencies setting out to memorialize a person or event should put in much consideration before beginning construction. When it comes to cost, economic return on investment may be a factor, and the practical implications of a budget are unavoidable. So in one sentence, putting a bow on my first body paragraph there. So my second would be about location. Location, meanwhile, is a universal factor to consider. After all, monuments exist to be seen. And then finally, I'm putting a bow on my third body paragraph. However, the most important factor to consider is the perception of societal groups regarding the person or event being memorialized. And then here's my final thoughts. And this is not anything super fancy. The thinking's done, like I said. I have a sentence on cost, a sentence on location, a sentence on societal perception. Boom, boom, boom. I hope you see this. This is not me copying down my topic sentences again. This is me just flowing from one idea to the next and seeing the connections between them. They are all important factors. And again, I've said however the most important factor is. So I'm thinking about this nuance. I'm not just saying, here's 3 factors, I'm done. Here's my final thought of my entire essay. Let's read the last sentence. There are certainly many factors to consider while planning a monument, but if ample consideration is included at the onset, the corresponding memorial will be one built to last. So I would just say, hey, give it a shot. Try to do your final sentence. If that sentence drops off and it's a 4-sentence paragraph, hey, worth it. This only helps your score because you're saying, yep, I had a big picture in mind when I started this essay. I think the conclusion signals to your reader, I knew what I was doing here. I started intentionally. I built a story or a narrative or an argument. It's probably the best word there. I built an argument and I ended my argument. I've been in control of the writing process as the writer the whole time. All right, I got some final thoughts and then I'll hang out for a couple minutes. If there's any last questions here, we're ending just under the hour mark. And again, there's another couple live streams going on tonight, so feel free to stick around Fiveable. And we are live streaming every Monday at this time for AP Language throughout the rest of the year. All right, final thought 1. Conclusions are your chance to stand out as a writer. When I grade at the actual reading, or when I score at the actual reading, I very rarely see effective conclusions. It's such a missed opportunity, I think, and that's why I'm glad you're here tonight to think about it. So there's your chance to stand out as a writer. Do something that no one else is doing, as long as it doesn't fall into the trap of like, look at this fancy thing I'm doing that doesn't have anything to do with my essay. Flex your writing, effective writing muscles here. All right, second, hit your main points clearly. Show that there was an effective line of reasoning throughout. So I would not say the 3 important factors are cost, location, and societal perception. That's too basic. But look at my conclusion. Again, you can download these slides. You can watch the replay. When you're writing, just look back at my conclusion real quick. How does yours compare? I give my students a copy of my conclusion, say, hey, read this a couple times, put it away, now write your own, see what you can do. All right, lastly, don't take any more than a few minutes. So the tension there is this. This is a cool opportunity. It's, for most people, a missed opportunity, but honestly, I get it, because body paragraphs are where you're still earning all your money. All right, let's take some questions here. Oh, what a great question. Should we add a counter argument and refute it? Yeah, I'd say, oh, and actually someone else asked the same exact question. So great. So this is a great question. In my body paragraph, I really didn't do that, but it is recommended. So I guess like let's talk this through for a minute. The most thoughtful, especially when we're talking about the sophistication point, right? That was like the signal of like, man, I really kicked butt on this essay. The best essays in some capacity address the counter argument, but don't feel like you have to do it formulaically. So, and you can, don't get me wrong. Again, there's millions of ways to get to this different score points. A common way that works is this. The first body paragraph is a counter argument that you address, and then the next 1 or 2 are your argument. Here's what I recommend though, because that seems a little bit formulaic, and a lot of times it falls a little flat. Here's what I would do. And I do a good job of this, and if you come to my argument stream or watch an argument replay that I'll do down the road, concrete evidence. Talk about the evidence. That's where I earn my points. And at the end of where I talk about the evidence, I quickly address a counterclaim. So it'd be something like this. Here, let me flip over because I'm done with my slides. It would be something like this. While some would say blank, comma, tell what you believe. While some would say blank, tell what you believe. Let's use a really basic example, like the first time I kind of talked this through with my class. I'll use myself. I wish this was true. Kevin is good at soccer. Okay, I'm very mediocre, but let's go with it. Concrete evidence. No, let's do this differently. Here's my claim. The more you practice, the better you will become at a skill. Here's my concrete evidence. Kevin is good at soccer. He practices every day. Therefore, he hit the game-winning goal last Thursday at our game. So that's very much concrete evidence. And then I would talk about how because I practice so much, that I was able to do it, yada yada, for a couple sentences. That's my explanation of my evidence. But then before I'm done, I would say, some might say, even without all of those hours of practice, Kevin could have hit the game-winning goal. However, it is undeniable that the likelihood of his success is a direct result of the hours of deliberate practice he put in to prepare for the moment of the game-winning shot, right? So again, concrete evidence, explain your evidence, and this is true for argument or synthesis. Some would say X, I say Y. I think that's the best way to do it in each body paragraph. That's a really good question. Okay, Ariana, I'm going to delete your question just because it was a repeat, but I appreciate the question. I've got another question here. Okay, are any websites or places we can go if we need someone to grade our essays if we don't have a teacher? Such crazy times. As of this moment, no, is my answer, and I could be wrong, but I've certainly looked around. Unless something has changed, I don't think that's an active service. All right, guys, I really appreciate your really thoughtful comments tonight. I know this has been a stressful weekend, to say the least, or a couple weeks for some of us. So I'd say lean on Fiveable in the next couple weeks, whatever your school situation is. We are here to continue to just focus on learning, to focus on how do we get better, no matter what our learning environment is at home. So spread the word. We really appreciate an active stream tonight. I'm going to go ahead and close out, and hopefully we'll see you for AP Language next Monday. All right, everybody, have a good rest of the night.